Okay, so now about submission information. So first of all, when you think you are ready to submit, before you do, there's a small checklist. So make sure you've done everything. So it's mainly points we've discussed before, but that are often left to the end of the preparation because you don't need it at first, but you need to do it at some point. So first of all, Pablo and Gabriele already discussed it. We stress it once again, proofread your article, make sure it is good enough for publication, that there is added value. If you are a student, be helped by your supervisor or someone else with more experience. Check the demo and the, I don't know why I want especially to write the reference, ignore the end of this sentence. And the big checklist here is about the demo and the code. There are a lot of things that you don't need at first in the demo because you are just trying to make something that works. And some steps are more details, important details, but you don't need them initially. So, as Pablo mentioned, there's a demo description. You don't need to write it well at first, but before you submit, you need to make it better. You need to make it very complete. So you can refer to the demo tutorial on day 2, the slides, to see how to write it. So I can show the slide quickly. So basically, the description is just an HTML line. So you can copy-paste it from another reference or simply from the slides here and change it as you want. So we know HTML in one line is not the most fun thing to edit on a JSON editor, but feel free to just write it on another editor and copy-paste it afterwards in your DDL. And soon there will probably be easier ways to write it in the description. So also check a lot your inputs. So check your inputs. Are they managed well? If the input is not what you expect in your demo, do you return a controlled error? So for instance, if you have a video or a data type, there is minimal to no control made by the demo system on the input type. So as I explained on Tuesday, if you ask as input for a zip file with a zip extension, but the user uploads an image, for instance, the resulting file will be a zip file. In name, it will be a .zip, but in practice, it will be an image. And you won't see it, so you have to manage it in your code. You have, if the input is not correct, to return a controlled error. So again, you can check the slides. It's near the end to see how to return a controlled error. Basically, you write an error message in the demo failure file, and then you quit the demo simply with the exit, for instance, Python. And also, so Pablo also mentioned it, check it again at the end before submitting. Does the method run without errors if you use the extreme values of parameters? So at the same time, did you choose well the parameters you expose and the ranges, the possible choices? But here especially because it will be checked by the reviewers, so check it first by yourself. Do you have any problems of division by 0 or other singularities, or simply absurd results if you use extreme values parameters? In which case, manage it in the code and maybe reduce the range of parameters you use. And finally, we ask you to use qualitative examples in the article. Ideally, the examples you use in the article should be present as blobs in the demo, so that users can then reproduce those very examples directly in the demo. And also in your articles, of course, if possible, show all parameters used on every instance so that it is easy to reproduce. It gives more confidence in what you do, since anyone can then reproduce exactly the experiment without any trouble. So this is a checklist. So of course there are other things to do. What is here is mostly what is often left to the end of the demo creation, because many people consider it not as urgent or important as the rest. So better check that you did it at some point. Now, you have your article, you have your demo, you have your code, you are ready to submit. You can head to IPOL, the IPOL website, click on Submit an article. Here, you have to go to the journal management system, which is called, in our case, OGS. You have to register in it. So if you have an account, you log in. If you don't have one yet, you create one. Very important, do not create an account with a Gmail address. Because of some errors, you will end up probably not receiving the emails, which is a bit difficult to manage if you don't get any email. So don't use a Gmail address. Don't use an address that is managed by Google, even if it is not Gmail. It can happen with some institutions. And as we mentioned, if you submit an article, you also agree to participate to the reviews. So sign up both as an author and a reviewer. And you can write your domain of expertise so that we know what kind of articles we can send you to ask for reviews. So once you've logged in, you just have to click here on New Submission. You select the kind of articles. So right now, there are only two options that you need to consider. This is articles, if you submit an article in the IPOL track or in the IPOL dataset track submission. And MLBriefs article, if you want to submit something in the MLBriefs track. So you have to check a few buttons. So again, it's always time to make sure you did it, even though probably you've already checked it. So the red lines here are shown in any case. You only need to consider them for IPOL articles in practice. So if it's an IPOL article, we support a limited set of languages. If you want to use another language, it is not certain we can do peer review of it, because we need reviewers who can read well enough this language, so contact us first. Again, only for IPOL articles, only the source, the code needs to be formatted in a certain way. You should not provide source code that is actually not relevant to the demo. So legacy code that you are actually no longer using at all, or codes for things that do something else entirely. So of course it's fine to provide a few things that are not in the article if it's just for visualization purposes, for instance, or error management really specifically related to IPOL. If you do that, better do it in separate files. That way it's easier to keep only to remove what is very specific to IPOL when the article is published. And finally, again, it's only for IPOL articles. It's good practice for MLBriefs article as well if it's your code, although it's not required because the code won't be peer reviewed. Make a clean code, comment it. It must match, in IPOL articles, it must match the pseudocode. Each function should be commented with expected input, expected outputs. As Pascal said earlier, it's very good if you can refer to specific parts of the article, so the pseudocode, the equations, so you can do it in the comments as well. And now for both IPOL and MLBriefs, so in the code, so in the repository, you have to provide some test data to check the code. So typically, this can be one or two of the inputs you provided in the blobs, so in the examples, provide it as well in the repository so that it is easy to test. And finally, if there are, especially if it is not your code, but also if it is yours, you need to provide the copyright and license information on each file. So if you publish it, if it is your code on IPOL articles, we ask you to use an open source license. Exceptions can apply in some cases, but discuss with us. Otherwise, by default, it should be open source, although you can choose among quite a large range of licenses. So if it is not an IPOL article, but an MLBriefs article, you don't need to write the copyright on each of the 5, but at least you should provide the copyright and license information in a separate file, if it's not on every file. So here, if it's not your code, it is just the code of the authors, and you have to use their own copyright, for instance. And finally, our materials to be published need to be submitted. And you must check that the license are done accordingly. So if you submit images, for instance, check that you have the right to publish them. And if there are as examples in your demo, don't forget to specify the credits, for instance. The same goes for the code. It needs to, if it's open source, then you need to cite it accordingly. If it's not open source, check that you have the right to share it. If not, you may need to ask the authors for specific permission to do it. So finally, you have to read and agree to the copyright notice of IPOL here. Most importantly here, you agree that once your article is published, it will be published under a Creative Commons license. And finally here, you can write comments for the editor. So you can write anything you think is relevant. One thing that is especially important to write is a link to your demo. So you can write it here so that we can easily find your demo without having to look for it specifically in the control panel. Okay, so next page, you can upload your PDF file. So right now, you just need to send the article as PDF. Keep in mind, once the article is accepted, there will be some copy editing, and you will need to provide the LaTeX sources so that it can be edited accordingly. So don't delete your sources. Well, never do that in any case, but keep in mind you will need them afterwards to publish. But right now, we only need the PDF. So you upload it, you save, you continue. On the next page, it's about entering all the metadata. So about all the authors, the title, the abstract, some keywords. So this should be very straightforward. Then you can upload the code, datasets. So either if it's a dataset track article or any dataset is published. In some cases, it may not be very practical to upload code or especially datasets if it's heavy. So instead, you can also use the box here, comments for the editor, give the link to the GitHub demo, and make sure that and the link to the dataset. A note, if you give the link to the GitHub demo, it should be public, which may not be the case in most cases, which is why we usually ask you to upload the source code. So we were here, so save, continue. And then, so here I just submitted a one file on my computer where you should upload the supplementary materials. Then you just click on Finish Submission, you confirm, and you're done. So congratulations, you submitted your article. So do you have any questions on the submission procedure? If not, of course, you can also ask questions when you are trying to submit if something does not seem clear to you. So we will will share a template to write articles, because IPOL articles use a specific template. So you can find it on the website. We also share it by email, so you can use it. As for the submission deadlines, so I realize there is actually no slides for the deadlines. We will send all relevant information by email. But keep in mind, for IPOL articles, IPOL track and dataset tracks, the submission is continuous. It's a journal, so you submit when you are ready, and it will be reviewed at that time. For MLBriefs article, and ideally for our articles written here, we would like to give you 1 month and finish writing the articles by the end of June. So if you don't manage it for some reason, you can, of course, submit later, but keep in mind, we may not be able to assign the same priority to review an article if you do it at a later date, so it might take longer